My name is Maya Harper. I'm 32 years old, and I've always had the perfect life, or so everyone thinks. I'm a successful businesswoman living in Los Angeles, with a high-paying job at a top marketing firm and a picture-perfect apartment. On paper, I'm exactly what my family wants me to be, ambitious, polished, and in control. But that's where the comparisons end. My sister, Charlotte, is everything I'm not. Wealthy, glamorous, and always one step ahead. While she collects designer shoes and social status like trophies, I've always been the quieter, more grounded one. When I married Ethan, a mechanic from a modest background, she didn't hide her disgust. To her, I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But what no one knew, and what I never expected, was that Ethan's mechanic shop was just the beginning. There's a world behind those garage doors that would shatter everything I thought I knew. And when I found out, it was already too late. I should have listened when they told me I was blind. The dinner was supposed to be a reunion, but it felt more like a trial. Charlotte's cold smile never left her face as she studied me across the table. "Still with him?" she asked, as if she couldn't believe I hadn't outgrown him by now. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Yes, still with him. He's a good man, Charlotte." She laughed, her glass of wine glinting under the soft lighting. "A mechanic, Maya. You could have had so much more." Her words sliced through the air, sharper than any knife. I felt my pulse quicken. I'd heard it before, her judgment, her disappointment. But tonight, something was different. I had never been the type to make a scene, but this time the words felt like poison. I could feel the walls closing in. The weight of her expectations was stifling, and I knew she saw me as nothing more than an afterthought, a black sheep forever in her shadow. But I didn't let it show. I smiled tightly, taking a slow sip of my water. "You wouldn't understand, Charlotte," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan's more than just a mechanic, and so am I." Charlotte raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Right, more than just a mechanic. Is that what you're telling yourself?" She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. "Tell me, Maya, do you even know what you've married into?" I froze, my throat tightening. "What do you mean?" Charlotte leaned back in her chair, her smile widening. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you? You're living in a fantasy. But don't worry, I'll show you how it ends." I was about to respond when my phone buzzed. The vibration was sharp, breaking the moment. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't recognize the number, but something about the urgency in the buzz made me reach for it immediately. It was a text message from Ethan. "We need to talk. Right now." The message was short, but the timing couldn't have been worse. I looked back at Charlotte, who was still watching me intently. I felt a rush of anxiety, the knot in my stomach tightening. I stood up quickly, excusing myself from the table. As I walked toward the door, Charlotte's voice followed me. "You'll regret this, Maya. You don't know who he really is." I didn't turn around. Outside, the cool Los Angeles air hit me like a slap. I immediately dialed Ethan's number, but it went straight to voicemail. My chest tightened as I stared at the phone, wondering what was happening, what Ethan was about to reveal. I was just about to get into my car when a figure appeared from the shadows. A man, tall, dressed in black, with an air of danger around him. "Miss Harper," he said, his voice low, smooth but carrying an edge. "I think we need to have a little talk about your husband." I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. The world around me seemed to fade as my mind raced, trying to piece together the meaning of his words. Ethan had never mentioned anything about this. Before I could speak, The man stepped closer, his hand extending towards me. He's in over his head. And so are you. The last words he spoke echoed in my mind. For a second, I wonder if I should call Jackson, but the thought fades quickly. He's been distant for days now, unreachable when I need him most. His absence weighs heavily in the empty space between us, and now, I'm not sure I can trust him. Not anymore. I moved to the window, pulling the blinds just enough to get a glimpse of the street below. Nothing unusual. The usual cars, the usual pedestrians. Yet, the feeling that I'm being watched lingers. I shake it off, my mind racing, trying to process what's happening. I can't ignore this. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. I have to know the truth. The following morning, I head out to meet Blake Tanner. I'm still reeling from the phone call, but I need answers, and he's the only one who seems to know more about Jackson's dealings than I do. Blake told me to meet him at a cafe downtown, a spot out of the way, hidden between two buildings on a quiet street. As I walk inside, I spot him in the back corner, his face a mask of tension. His eyes scan the room before settling on me. The usual smugness I've grown accustomed to seeing in him is absent today. He gestures for me to sit. I hesitate for a moment, then take the seat across from him. Anna, he starts, his voice low. You've got to understand something. Jackson's in deep. He's not who you think he is. I nod, the pit in my stomach deepening. I know. I found the photos, the transactions. My voice catches, and I have to stop myself from blurting out everything I've learned. I can't lose control now. Blake leans forward, eyes narrowing. It's worse than that, trust me. Jackson's been playing both sides of this. He's got a whole underground network of buyers, sellers, racers. And the man you're married to? He's the one at the center of it all. The syndicate, the races, all of it. I shake my head, disbelief clawing at me. No, not Jackson. He glances around before continuing in a hushed tone. I told you, he's not just a mechanic. He's the mastermind behind one of the largest illegal racing operations in the world. You've been blind to the truth, Anna. And it's not just about cars. It's about money, power, and influence. He's got ties to people who can make you disappear. All of this, it's connected. It's too big for you to handle alone. I feel the ground shift beneath me, like I'm standing on the edge of something I can't control. I want to argue. I want to scream at Blake, but I can't. His words hold too much weight. The truth is out there, right in front of me, and I've been too naive to see it. Blake slides a folder across the table to me. Take a look at this. You'll understand everything soon enough. Jackson didn't just marry you to escape his past. He brought you into it. I flip open the folder, my heart racing as I skim through documents. Names I don't recognize. Dates and locations of races. High-profile clients. But one name stands out, Victor Delgado. The man at the top of the pyramid. The man who owns everything. The man I now know is the true mastermind behind the operation. Blake leans back, watching me. Victor's the one pulling all the strings. Jackson's just the mechanic who built the cars. But he's deeper in this than you think. Trust me, if you don't get out now, you'll be in over your head. I can't breathe. I want to tear the folder in half. I want to walk out and never look back. But I can't. I need to know what happened to my life, to my husband. I leave the cafe with my mind spinning, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. The sun is starting to set, the city coming alive with the hum of traffic, but it feels off. Every step I take, I feel eyes on my back. My phone rings again. It's Jackson. My heart skips a beat, and I almost drop the phone as I answer. Jackson. The line crackles, and I can hear his voice faintly on the other end. Anna, we need to talk. I hold my breath. Where are you? I need to see you. I can't come home, he says, his voice tense. Not yet. But listen to me, Anna. You need to stay away from the garage. Stay away from Victor. Do you hear me? My pulse quickens. What's going on, Jackson? What aren't you telling me? There's a long pause. I'm sorry, Anna. I didn't mean for you to get pulled in. But now, it's too late. I need you to trust me. I want to scream at him, to demand the truth. But all I can say is, I'm not trusting anyone anymore, Jackson. The line goes silent for a moment before he says, You have to, for your own safety. The call ends abruptly. I stand there, in the middle of the sidewalk, the words echoing in my head. Safety. I don't know what that means anymore. A black SUV pulls up beside me. The window rolls down, and a voice I don't recognize calls out, We need to talk, Anna. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always watching me. I had felt it earlier when I left the bank, but now the sensation was louder, sharper. The black SUV that had been parked outside my house earlier? It was still there, parked across the street, its tinted windows reflecting nothing but darkness. Every time I looked, it was like a shadow lurking, waiting for me to slip up. I wasn't paranoid. At least, not yet. Power is not given. Power is taken, I whispered to myself, the words I'd overheard from Marcus' old interviews. That thought was the only thing keeping me grounded as I walked back toward my car. I had just secured my future, $27 million, my inheritance, and the freedom to do whatever I wanted. But it came with a price. I slid into my car, hands gripping the steering wheel as I watched the SUV disappear into the rearview mirror. It was time to meet Marcus. I had to hear it from him, everything. The answers I'd been seeking for so long. I couldn't let him control the narrative anymore. The drive to his penthouse felt like an eternity. The city's neon lights blurred together, flickering in and out of focus as if they were reflecting my own fractured state of mind. I was finally free, but something gnawed at me. Was I really free? Or had I just been pushed into another game? The kind where the stakes were too high for anyone to win? When I arrived, I parked and took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. The towering building loomed before me, its glass windows reflecting the night sky like a giant mirror. I walked inside, and the elevator ride up to Marcus' floor felt too long, like the walls were closing in around me. As the doors opened, I was greeted by his assistant, a tall woman with icy blue eyes. Mr. Holloway is expecting you. I nodded, but the words seemed distant, as if I was watching myself move through this entire scene. I walked down the hallway, my steps quick, deliberate. Every part of me was ready for what was coming, or so I thought. Marcus' penthouse was sleek, minimalistic, with dark wood floors that gleamed in the ambient light. It felt cold, unwelcoming, like a place designed for meetings, not for anyone to ever feel comfortable. Come in, Maya, Marcus said, his voice smooth, calm. He was seated at the far end of a long conference table, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was the image of control, but I could see the faintest flicker of something in his eyes. Concern? Regret? It was hard to tell. I didn't waste time. I walked straight to the table, throwing the papers I'd taken from the bank onto it. You knew, I said, my voice steady but low. You knew everything. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply placed his glass down and leaned back in his chair, his hands folded neatly in front of him. I knew the trust had been set up for you, he replied. But you didn't know the full story, did you? My pulse quickened. What do you mean? He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. Richard didn't just hide your inheritance from you. He never wanted you to have it. Your mother knew that. She knew that for you to get this, you'd have to break free of him. And she wanted you to be ready. She wanted you to have the power to take control, but not until you were prepared. I stared at him, feeling the weight of his words settle into my chest. So, you've been manipulating me the whole time? Marcus shook his head slowly. Not manipulating, guiding. You needed the right push. I just made sure you were given the chance to take control of your life. I felt a sickening realization creep over me. All these months, all these weeks of playing my own hand, thinking I was the one making decisions. I had been a pawn in someone else's game. Marcus had been playing me, and I'd played right into his hands. But I didn't show it. I couldn't let him see me break. Not now. So, what now? I asked, trying to steady my voice. Do you want me to join your empire? Is that why you've been feeding me this story all along? He smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smirk. I'm not asking you to join anything, Maya. This is your life. But if you want my help to ensure Richard never gets his hands on what's yours, well, we can make that happen. A cold shiver ran down my spine. What do you mean? Marcus stood and walked toward the window, gazing out at the city below. Richard is a dangerous man, but you've got something now that he doesn't. You've got leverage. You've got power. I followed his gaze out the window, watching the lights flicker across the city. It was all suddenly too much. The power, the money, the manipulation, it was all becoming clear. This wasn't just about getting back at my father. It was about something bigger, something I wasn't ready for. Marcus turned to face me. You're not just playing for your freedom anymore, Maya. You're playing for control of everything. And the moment you take it, there's no going back. The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to become the person who could change everything in an instant. But then again, who would be? I stood there, frozen, trying to process what he had just said. It felt like a million possibilities were racing through my mind, each one darker than the last. I had taken the first step, but I wasn't sure where it would lead. The tension in the room was suffocating, and I knew that whatever I chose now would change everything. My father, Marcus, the $27 million. None of it mattered if I couldn't find a way to control it all. Marcus watched me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The air in the elevator felt thick as it ascended toward Marcus' floor. My palms were slick with sweat, my heartbeat rapid in my chest. I kept thinking back to what he'd said, how he'd seemed so sure that I was ready. But ready for what? To take on the world? To confront my father? Or was I just another pawn in someone else's game? As the elevator doors slid open with a quiet hiss, I stepped out into the sleek hallway of his penthouse. The sound of my heels clicking against the floor echoed, amplifying the silence that surrounded me. The walls were lined with dark wood panels, and the only light came from the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. It was all so cold, so calculated. I wasn't sure if Marcus had been preparing me for something all along, or if I'd been the one moving toward this moment all on my own. But now, here I was, staring down the edge of something I couldn't yet fully comprehend. I walked toward the heavy double doors of the living room, the space bathed in a soft amber glow. Marcus stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline. His silhouette was framed by the city lights, making him look like a man who controlled everything. I hated him for that. I hated how much control he had over this situation, over my life. "Glad you could make it," he said without turning around. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. It was too much, and I was suffocating in the weight of it all. His voice was low and steady as he finally turned to face me. "I've been watching you, Maya. You've done well. You're stronger than I expected." I swallowed hard, trying to hold back the rush of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. "What do you want from me?" I forced the words out. "You've made your intentions clear." Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I want you to succeed. I want you to take what's yours. Your father's empire or what's left of it." He stepped toward me, his eyes scanning my face as though searching for something, a weakness, perhaps a flicker of doubt. I crossed my arms tightly over my chest, refusing to let him see how rattled I was. "And what do you get out of it? Why help me?" He leaned against the polished bar, his fingers tapping lightly against the surface. "You'll be a part of something much bigger. You think this is just about your inheritance? About a few $1,000,000? No, it's about power, control, legacy." I took a step toward him, my voice growing colder. "My legacy? Or yours?" The faintest flicker of something passed across his face. Surprise, maybe. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same cold, calculating gaze. "Both," he said, his tone flat. "Because in the end, power is a shared thing. You can't have it unless you're willing to share it." I shook my head. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this. All I wanted was to be free of my father's control. "Freedom is a myth," he replied softly, his eyes narrowing. "You're already in the game, Maya, whether you want it or not. The only choice you have now is whether you want to be the one calling the shots." I felt a sharp pang of doubt stab through me. What if I had already lost? What if this was all just a game and I had no say in it? What if Marcus was right and freedom was something I could never truly grasp? Before I could say another word, the sudden sound of the doorbell rang through the silence, pulling me from my thoughts. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't even acknowledge the interruption. He simply walked over to the door, his hand already reaching for the handle. "I'll be right back," he said, his voice smooth, but with an edge that made me uneasy. I watched him walk to the door, opening it with a casual flick of his wrist. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped into the room. His face was familiar, too familiar. It was Adrian Black, one of Richard's oldest business rivals, the man who had been trying to undermine my father for years. The same man who had been watching me earlier outside the bank. A sudden chill ran down my spine as I stood frozen in place. Adrian's eyes met mine, and he gave me a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't expect to see you here, Maya," he said, his tone dripping with mock politeness. "I thought you'd be with your father by now, enjoying your little birthday celebration." Marcus shot Adrian a quick look before turning back to me. "Adrian's here to help, Maya. He's a part of the team now." "Team?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "What exactly is the team you're talking about?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured toward the sleek, modern chairs by the windows. "Let's sit. We have a lot to discuss." Adrian made himself comfortable in one of the chairs, crossing his legs, while I remained standing, my eyes darting between the two men. I could feel the tension building, thick and suffocating. Everything in me screamed that this was wrong, but I couldn't pull away. I was trapped now, tied to something bigger than I could fully understand. "Richard's hold on the city is slipping," Adrian said, breaking the silence. And you, Maya, have the key to bring him down. I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment when I would either take control of everything or lose it all. But as I prepared to speak, I caught something in Adrian's eyes, something fleeting. A shift, a small flicker of malice. He wasn't here to help me. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, but I didn't have the full picture yet. Marcus turned to me. You're not the only one who's been playing this game, Maya. You just didn't know it yet. The revelation hung in the air like a loaded gun. The air felt too still as I stepped out of the elevator. Marcus' penthouse loomed ahead, its cold glass walls casting long shadows in the dim light. My footsteps echoed in the silent hall as I made my way to the front door. But this time, I wasn't here to ask for answers. I was here to take control. I knew something was wrong the moment I walked in. The tension was thick, like a storm about to break. Adrian was already there, sitting on the couch, eyes fixed on a set of files spread out in front of him. He looked up as I entered, a thin smile playing at the edges of his mouth. Amaya, he said coolly, it's good to see you're not running away. Why would I? I replied, my voice steady. You think I'm afraid of you? Afraid? He let out a short, almost mocking laugh. Not yet, but you will be soon. My heart pounded in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I crossed the room to Marcus, who was standing by the bar, his back turned to me. He didn't acknowledge my presence at first, like he was waiting for something. I need to know what's going on, I said, my words sharp as I stood in front of him. No more games, Marcus. Tell me what you really want. He turned, his eyes cold but calculating. I told you before, you need to take what's yours. The game is bigger than just you, Maya. Stop playing around with me, I snapped. Just tell me what's going on. What's the real plan? Marcus studied me for a moment, then took a slow sip from his glass before setting it down on the counter. He let out a breath, almost like he was trying to decide whether to tell me the truth or not. You really want to know? He asked, his voice low. I nodded, my jaw clenched. Yes. I've been asking myself the same thing since he showed up. What's your game? What's Adrian's game? Marcus' eyes shifted to Adrian, who was still sitting on the couch, watching us like a hawk. The silence stretched on, thick with unspoken words. The truth is, Marcus finally said, his gaze back on me, Adrian's been feeding us both lies. Everything we've been working toward, everything I've been helping you with, it's all been a setup. The room seemed to tilt as his words sank in. I stared at him, disbelief rising in my chest. What do you mean, a setup? Adrian stood up, pushing the files aside. He smirked as he walked toward me, his steps slow but deliberate. I think it's time you knew, Maya. You're not the only one who's been played here. My stomach dropped. What the hell is going on? Adrian took a step closer, his voice lowering. I've been working with your father, Maya, for years. All this time, I've been setting you up to destroy Marcus. You really thought you were in control, didn't you? The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. It felt like the world was spinning out of control. Everything I thought I knew slipping away in an instant. I looked from Adrian to Marcus, my mind racing. You, I stammered. You've been working together? Marcus' expression remained cold, but there was something else there now, something like a flicker of regret. It was never supposed to go this far, he said, his voice hard, but it did, and now we're all in too deep. I could barely breathe. My head spun with the weight of the truth crashing down on me. All this time, I thought I was outsmarting my father, breaking free from his control. But I hadn't been playing the game. I had been a piece in someone else's. Adrian stepped toward me, his hands raised in mock surrender. It's simple, Maya. Your father wanted you out of the picture. He knew you'd eventually find out about the trust fund. He knew you'd try to take control. But he didn't count on you turning into a pawn in this little war. I clenched my fists at my sides, trying to steady myself. The rage inside me was rising, burning hot. But I forced myself to focus. So you've been manipulating me from the start? Why didn't you just come clean? Adrian's eyes gleamed with cold amusement. Because, Maya, you're stronger than you think. You've always been the key to everything. It wasn't about the money. It was about power. And now, we're going to see who gets to claim it. My blood ran cold. You're telling me you've been using me this whole time? It wasn't just me, Marcus said, his voice firm. Your father's been controlling this whole game. You weren't supposed to find out about the trust fund. And when you did, I couldn't let you take it without consequences. I stepped back, a knot of disbelief tightening in my chest. So this whole time you've been working together? What does that make me? A tool? It's not that simple, Marcus replied. You're not just a tool, Maya. You're the heir, the key, the person who can tip the scales. Adrian's smirk never wavered. You thought you were free. You were never free. You've always been part of something much bigger. I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in, and I couldn't tell who the real enemy was anymore. My father? Marcus? Adrian? Or was it me? Was I the one who had been playing the game all along without knowing it? You've already made your choice, Adrian continued, his voice low. Now it's time to deal with the consequences. I didn't know what that meant, but one thing was clear. The game was far from over. The sound of rain against the window was deafening, but the silence between us was louder. Marcus and Adrian stood across from me, their faces unreadable. The game had shifted, and the power I thought I had now seemed out of my grasp. Everything I'd worked for, all the anger and frustration that had built up over the years, had led me here. But now that I was staring at the people who had manipulated me from the start, I realized something. I was never truly in control. And yet, somehow I still had a choice. You've played me this whole time, I said, my voice trembling despite myself. You used my father's empire, my inheritance, everything to manipulate me into your little war. Why? Marcus looked at me, his expression softening for just a moment before hardening again. Because power is never just given, Maya. It's taken. And it's not about money. It's about control. About who decides the future. Adrian snorted. And you think you're in control now? I don't know what I think, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. But I do know this. I won't let you use me anymore. There was a brief pause as Marcus and Adrian exchanged a look. The tension was palpable, the air thick with everything unspoken between us. You don't have the power to stop this, Adrian said, his tone low and menacing. Not yet, I said, taking a step forward. But I will, because this ends tonight. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door, leaving them behind. The truth had been revealed, the games, the lies, the manipulation. The stakes were higher than I ever could have imagined. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, control. I wasn't the victim anymore. Outside, the rain poured down in sheets. I didn't care. I needed to get away, needed to think, to clear my head. My hands shook as I fumbled with my phone, dialing the number I knew would change everything. The line rang once, then twice. Finally, my lawyer, Eleanor Vance, picked up. "Eleanor," I said, my voice urgent, "I need you to meet me at the courthouse. Now." I didn't wait for her response. I hung up and climbed into my car, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and determination. This was it. No more playing by their rules. No more being the pawn. I was going to take back what was mine, and I was going to do it on my terms. The drive to the courthouse was quick, the streets slick with rain. I arrived and parked in the underground lot, making my way quickly to the elevator. When the doors opened, Eleanor was already there, waiting for me. "I got your message," she said, her face tight with concern. "What's going on?" "I'm filing for control of the trust," I said, my voice steady now. "I'm taking Richard down. I'm taking Marcus down. And I'm not going to stop until I have everything I'm owed." Eleanor's eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her expression. "Are you sure you're ready for this? It's going to get ugly." "I'm ready," I said, my voice cold, determined. "I've been ready for this my entire life." We walked into the courtroom together, the doors closing behind us. The sound of our footsteps echoed off the marble floors, the air heavy with the weight of what was to come. As I took my seat, I couldn't help but wonder if I was really prepared for what lay ahead. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't walking away this time. The case went on for hours, with Eleanor presenting our evidence against Richard and Marcus. The details of the manipulated trust fund, the lies, the scheming, it all came out. I could see Richard's face as he sat in the front row, his expression twisted in anger and disbelief. But the truth was undeniable, and for the first time in my life I saw him squirm. When the judge finally rendered her decision, the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "The trust is granted to you, Maya Lawson," she said, her voice firm. "You are the rightful heir. The actions of Richard Lawson and Marcus Holloway have been deemed fraudulent, and the assets will be returned to you." The room seemed to spin as I stood there, the weight of the decision sinking in. The power I'd always been denied, the control that had been stripped from me, was finally mine. But as I looked around the room, at the faces of those who had tried to control me, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom, about taking back what was mine, but also about choosing my own path. "Justice is never easy," I whispered to myself as the gavel came down. "But it's always worth it." As I left the courthouse, the rain had stopped, leaving the city air crisp and clean. The world felt different now. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be more battles, more betrayals, and more challenges to face. But for the first time in my life, I knew I wasn't alone. I had the power to shape my future, to write my own story. And that was enough.